wasn't holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through. Times don't fly too high. Be sure to keep the ground in sight. Fly forever if you keep it tight. Love the world but keep the sky on your mind.
We'll be the coolest aunties ever. Come on.
Exactly. So for us,
Yeah.
the journey will be a bit more smoother. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's great. That's so funny because also for me, I totally resonate, right, with being excited about food appliances because the my air fryer changed my life.
Air fryer is such a game changer. I'm trying to focus more on my health because, as
Uh-huh.
you just said, we're becoming aunties, right? So we have to take care of ourselves a lot more and be intentional about going to the gym and eating healthy. And this food appliances just make it so much easier to achieve
Game
this. So
changers.
yeah,
Yeah.
I love mine as well.
Yeah. So the aspiring aunties out there. Like we're telling you, food processor and air fryer, they will change your life.
It will change your life.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Katekani, so I already know you very well. You are one of my favorite friends and soul sisters. We're in a group chat called Soul Sisters.
Oh, yeah, thanks. Great
Yeah.
to hear that I'm one of your favorites. I hope I'm the favorite.
Don't try this competition. Like this is.
Yeah, okay. We'll sort it out offline.
But I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience just a little bit. So where are you from? Where are you based right now? What industry do you work in? And maybe also tell us 3 words that describe you and why.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. So my name is Katekani Mabasa, born and raised in South Africa. So I'm South African, hence the accent,
Mm-hmm.
and a rather confusing accent because I've spent the last couple of years working and living abroad.
Yeah.
So I tried my best to keep my South African accent, but somehow I lost it somewhere along the lines, right? It went hiking and it hasn't returned as yet.
Hey,
So
it's in the Alps. It's in the Alps.
hopefully I can find it there one of these days. I'm currently based in Amsterdam, in the Netherlands. I've
Mm-hmm.
been here for just over a year now, and I'm in the health tech industry, and currently the global M&A finance lead. So maybe in terms of what M&A is, mergers and acquisitions,
Yes,
and
indeed.
we'll talk a bit more about what I do in my role later. And
Yeah.
in terms of just my upbringing, I've been raised in South Africa, as mentioned, and I experienced the typical South African life, the average sort of middle family or middle, how do
Like middle
you
class.
middle
Mm-hmm.
class? Yes,
Mm-hmm.
middle class, the right word. Middle class family in a small town. I attended my high school in a village, right, and we used to walk like 5 kilometers. So almost every day will be like a leg day. I
Eh?
always put that as, as my sports activity, because I really
Mm-hmm.
didn't really play any activities in terms of sports. I was more of a nerd,
Yeah.
so more into books than sports. And I'm firstborn as well, so in a family of four,
Uh-huh.
and I had to go through the whole challenge and experience of being, the firstborn. So you're like the deputy parent. You are the stand,
Yes.
so
Mm-hmm.
all that pressure growing up. So quite a very typical, average sort of black
Yeah.
family type of upbringing.
Now, so let's talk about the three words that describe you.
Yes. So the three words that describe me is ambitious, determined, as well as
Mm-hmm.
deeply empathetic, right?
Okay.
So I'll tell you why, right? I know ambitious for a woman is such a very strong word because
It's
as
a
women,
heavy, it's a loaded word, right?
a loaded word because as women, we are always told not to be ambitious. And every time you're ambitious as a woman, you are surrounded with negative connotation. But how I look at
Mm-hmm.
my success and where I am right now, I don't think I would have been where I am if I wasn't ambitious and if I didn't
Mm-hmm.
use ambition as a fuel. So I use it as a fuel, and that doesn't really impact my ability to be humble,
Right.
right? So I'm
Mm-hmm.
personally humble, but professionally ambitious, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and it's very important for us to have this because you have to set a target for something that you want to do, and sometimes you're the first in your race to step into a different field, a
Right.
different way of doing things. And if you are not ambitious about it, then you probably won't be able to succeed. Because
Mm-hmm.
then you will just surround yourself with the dogma that we keep getting surrounded with as Black women. And
Mm-hmm.
dogma is basically living the result of other people's thinking. So if they don't think
Right.
Black women are capable of this, they can succeed in this and this, then without ambition, you just sort of just settle into that dogma. And as such,
Right.
it's always important that you are determined, and hence it just speaks to both the ambition and the determination to basically pull through and go for anything that you want. And then
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
deeply empathetic, I really love people and I care about people. So it's quite important for me that I'm always empathetic and meet people where they are. And given my travel experience, it's just always like a relearning process, right? Because you learn how people do things differently all over the
Right.
world. And you always have to show up not with that arrogant of, oh yeah, this is the right way of living and doing
Mm-hmm.
things. You
Mm-hmm.
always have to
Mm-hmm.
show up with, hey, I want to learn, I want to listen in, and the best character that helps me achieve this and achieve it more effectively to be able to build a global network is just being empathetic.
Right. Right. I love those. So ambitious, determined, and deeply empathetic.
Yes, yes,
And I think they describe you so well. Before we move on, I want to hear your thoughts on the topic of humility because you mentioned it just now, right? So it is another characterization that is quite contentious, especially for Black women, right?
yes,
In terms of it seems when we show up with ambition, and it is received quite differently
yes.
than other races or typically against like white men, for example, right? What is your experience of that and people sort of trying to humble you?
I think the reception I get is that for them it's disruptive, right? Because they don't see you coming,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Right.
Left
So
field, left field.
right. So and hence I mentioned that when most of us are stuck with the dogma because it becomes very generational, right? And
Right.
women around you will encourage you not to be ambitious, right? That, hey, look,
Mm-hmm.
you shouldn't do that, right? As a woman, it can be seen in all different ways. You're aggressive or arrogant,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case is. And as women, we don't want to associate ourselves with such words, right?
Right.
But in reality, we should be okay with it. Like, okay, cool. If it makes me arrogant, but it serves my goals, why not call me arrogant, right? We
Mm-hmm.
have to start stepping into that ability to do so and still be humble. right? Not change our humility. And that's why when you ask this question, it's a great question, because one of the things I mentioned is that, like, I'm humble as a person, and I still want to be humble. And as a woman, I don't have any sort of ambitions to act like a man, right? Because that's not
Right.
what we do as
Mm-hmm.
women.
Mm-hmm.
So we should still uphold our values as women. However, separate the two things, right? You
Right.
can be personally humble, professionally just you out there, right? You are
Yeah.
achieving your goals. And when you do that, like I said, it's met with like, oh, that's disruptive. And then the doors actually open for you. And then you
Right.
actually get that role that you actually wanted. You get the number that you were trying to negotiate, because you are showing up so confident that you will pull through, and you
Mm-hmm.
just and the audience can read your confidence level. So that's why it's so important for us as women to distinguish the two things, right? And
Right.
still show up with both of them, like show up
Mm-hmm.
personally humble, professionally just ambitious.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So Katekani, let's jump into your career path a little bit here. What did you want to be when you were growing up? And then what led you to the current career path that you are in right now?
So I wanted to be an accountant growing up,
Oh.
right? So I my mom actually was pregnant with me when she was studying her second year in
Uh-huh.
university, and she was studying commercial subjects like business economics, accounting, and business management, right? So
Okay.
I always feel like I cheated, right, to some extent, because I
You were
started,
already going to class when you were in in the womb.
you know. Exactly. And being raised by a mother who was so passionate about those subjects, I think it just resonated with me as well. And
Right.
it was very evident in high school that I'm probably not going to be a doctor because of my fear of blood. Like, all
Yeah.
of that whole thing is just too scary for me. So it was very clear. uh,
Mm-hmm.
and I was really a top student in high school in accounting. So for me, it just naturally became something that I wanted to get into. So I studied
Mm-hmm.
my degree, my undergrad in accounting, so become accounting, and I did that for 4 years. And
Mm-hmm.
during my studies, that's when I learned more about financial management. And I'm like, oh, okay, so there's accounting, and within the accounting stream, you can venture into different careers.
Ah, I see. Okay. Okay. So tell us more about these different career paths.
So, what made me sort of shift towards the finance management stream, and just this different career paths, is that with accounting, accounting is the art of recording and reporting financial transactions within a company.
Indeed.
And
Mm-hmm.
so you are looking back in terms of how the company performed, and you are then reporting that to different stakeholders. Whereas with financial management, is the forward-looking element of the business, where you take
Uh-huh.
it and report it and say, okay, we are second half into the year. We've made 5 million. What are we going to make for the remainder of the year, for the next 3 years, for the next
Mm-hmm.
5 years? Where is the business going towards, right? What are the different products that we need to sell to be able to be profitable? What are
Right.
different issues within our ecosystem that might impact our performance as a business? So as a finance manager, you are able to step into those kind of conversations. And for me, it was really fascinating, because it's like this combination of something I love, which is, your accounting basics, and
Right.
also the creative element and the ability to drive and steer, or sort of be part of the experience of steering a business towards a particular direction. So I always found that fascinating.
Ah.
And I just have, I have this ability in my roles to be able to help steer a company towards a particular direction. And obviously, that direction should be being able to be profitable,
Being able to be
sustainable as well.
profitable. Yeah.
Supporting, everything that we're doing around sustainability, which is also things that are quite close to me, but at the
Yeah.
same time, just the whole experience. So that's really the difference between the two sort of careers that
I
I was
love
studying,
that.
and why I went to finance as my as my
You
core.
leaned into finance. You know, it's
Yes,
so interesting to hear that, to learn that, right? Because my perception of your work before now was just really like, I never thought of even of myself in there, right? Because I'm a marketer, by the way, for everyone to kind of know the direction where this is coming from. And I just always thought like numbers, like I don't want to spend time behind a spreadsheet all my life. Like I just know. But
exactly.
I'm learning that you were actually a storyteller as well, but you tell stories with numbers.
With numbers. Exactly. You've put it so perfectly that indeed with
Yeah.
finance, that's what you are. And then with
Mm-hmm.
accounting, you basically you write the script, right? So the
Right.
accountant sort of help us gather those numbers and say, well, here's
Uh-huh.
what we're working with. And then the finance managers turn that into a beautiful story. And sometimes it's a terrible story, depending on how the
Hey.
business is performing. But
Yeah.
it's such a
Mm-hmm.
really interesting field. So right after graduating, I went straight into an undergrad, a graduate program
Yeah.
in
Mm-hmm.
finance, and that sort of
Mm-hmm.
took off in terms of my career.
Fantastic. So, what do you want to do in this space? What are your future ambitions in it?
So currently, I'm in mergers and acquisitions, and
Mm-hmm.
what we do basically is we facilitate the process of acquiring a company, which is basically buying another company. And we perform due diligences to ensure that everything that we liked about that particular target is actually in line. So, from a finance
Mm-hmm.
perspective, I go through their financial results and everything that is
Mm-hmm.
important for us to think about, and business outlooks and so forth. And in that, it's such an amazing field. When I did my master's in finance and investments, I did my dissertation
Mm-hmm.
in M&A, right, and
Okay.
whether mergers
Okay.
and acquisitions do add value, right. So you always
Mm-hmm.
see a lot of transactions where one company is buying another. So we are right in the process of facilitating that whole experience because it's a whole
Okay.
art on its own. So what I want to do simply is to continue deepening my expertise in this area and
Okay. Okay.
hopefully become an M&A doctor, do my PhD. So maybe you can already start
Hey.
calling me Dr. K, something.
Hey. 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 That day. Now, Katikani, you also hinted at that your career has taken you to different countries, right? So, can you give us maybe like a broad view of that and also share two perhaps big insights or lessons that you have kind of picked up along the way, or two things that keep you moving, right? As well, you already talked about how being deeply empathetic helps you connect wherever you go. So I love that already, but I want to add a little bit more to that.
Yes. So I'm currently living and working in my fifth country, right? So
Ah. Mhm.
I lived and worked in Lagos, Nigeria, in
Mhm.
Nairobi, in Kenya, in Pennsylvania, in the U.S., as well as in the UK, and
Right.
I'm currently
Mhm.
now in Amsterdam. And going through sort of like this kind of great career experience, I learned a few things, right? So the first thing I'll mention is diversity and the importance of diversity.
Right.
In
Mhm.
my entire career, the people that have been part of it is not really just South Africans. I've had managers all over the world. I've had
Mhm.
mentors and sponsors across a different spectrum, and they always brought in fresh ways for me to grow and develop. And it's so important, right? And it also made me see that diversity is so important. Like when
Mhm.
you work in a company that embraces it fully, you get sort of the maximum of what you can get because there is
Right.
so much you can get from people that look and talk like you and had similar experiences as you did, right? So
Mhm.
the first thing I can definitely say is that it just made me embrace diversity and the power of it. And the second one is that it made me see that the world is not as big as you perceive it, and also
Mhm.
that if you want to step into any type of career, you can, right? Because
Mhm.
when I was starting, my mindset was based on what I used to be experienced to, right?
Right.
So I spoke about, oh, I wanted to be an accountant, right? Because then that was something that I was exposed to, right? I wasn't
Yes.
really
Mm-hmm.
exposed to all the different areas of what my accounting experience can actually do, right? And once I started doing all these different graduate programs, I did different roles. I did international finance management, I did internal
Mm-hmm.
audit. I also got to have an experience where I'm able to learn my strengths and my weaknesses, because your strengths
Right.
and weaknesses are activated in different roles. And
Mm-hmm.
because that is so important at a very early stage of your career, it sets you up for success, because you are
Right.
able to know, oh, here's my strengths. These are the kind of roles I excel in. So let me do more of this kind of roles and excel and accelerate
Mm-hmm.
into that. And then certain roles, you're not good at. So there's really no need to keep, trying. So
Right.
that's the beauty of it. You are able to find yourself. You are able to know what you're good at, what you don't. And it's such a privilege at a very young stage. And it's so important for you coming up, because of just the fact that we are not really exposed to a lot growing up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay. I love that. So just to replay that a little bit, you got to really embrace diversity, right? And that is in all its aspects. You've had mentors and sponsors throughout your career, who each brought different flavors
Yes.
to your experiences and to how you can grow. And then this second one, can you replay that back to me?
The second one is the importance of having the ability to know your strengths and your weaknesses a lot
Okay.
earlier
Mm-hmm.
in your career. So that's
Uh-huh.
the
Okay.
second one.
Okay. Let's get into that topic of strengths and weaknesses, right? I want to hear how you, at least, so my experience of it is definitely that it's a continuous learning, right?
Yes, correct.
Over time. But for you, what would you say are your strengths, and how did you come to discover that or to unearth that?
That's a very great question. So one of my top strengths is creative problem solving,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
right? And how I got to learn this was that in my graduate programs, I used to get sent into this type of projects where you need to go into a particular country, and
Uh-huh.
within a short period of time, you need to solve the problem that that country is actually experiencing,
Right.
right? So that requires you to obviously not necessarily apply the standard problem solving mechanism, because you only have a short period of time. So you have to tap into, hey, how can I solve this problem in a very
Mm-hmm.
short period of time? So if it's an audit, for example, and we're going through an audit and issues are identified, and they're like, hey, we need to solve these issues in a very short period of time so that we can actually fulfill the requirements that are needed for that audit
Mm-hmm.
to get signed off. So in that case, you have to think outside of the box. You have to be creative.
Right.
And I was really great at it, but I never realized it, right? Until I start seeing that those kind of opportunities keep coming to me, right?
Right.
So I keep getting leaders that come to me and say, hey, we've just had this problem, right? This crisis. Are you available to go and help? And I'm like, wait, why?
Yeah.
you know and sometimes it could be leaders that are not necessarily in the same function or same department that I'm in, right?
Yeah.
And then I understood as I grow that actually it's that creative problem solving strength that I possess, and
Mm-hmm.
as a result it's quite a very valuable experience to have, and I probably wouldn't have known about it should I have not necessarily gone through these different roles and had different experiences to actually realize that I'm really great at creative problem solving.
So experience taught you that, right? And I think a lot of people, when they are kind of going through this self-reflection, their first moment of saying, like, what are my strengths? They're like stuck, right? They're like, I don't know. But it's in actually your strengths already exist. They are like there's a thread,
Yes, yes, it's
right?
just that you need the right opportunities to activate it.
to
right?
activate it. And
Correct.
then the reflection lets you look back at all of that. So I have done that quite a bit in when I do coaching, right? To help people really understand, like, hey, there's that and that and that, and they would have never thought of it as a story, right? That tells them like this is their strength, or this is actually what they are really passionate about, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and I would say you also definitely probably brought a different flavor to the problem solving, right? Because of the uniqueness of your background,
Yes,
right?
indeed. I mean, I can talk a bit about that, right? So,
Yeah, so Black women in finance are rare. You're like a rare gem.
yeah, exactly. And one of the things that I actually, I've grown to sort of learn is that our challenges as Black women do not necessarily limit us for opportunities.
Mm.
In fact, it makes us better positioned to assist in certain areas that
Uh-huh.
others do not have the lived experiences to apply to a particular problem in the workplace. So
Right.
I'll give you an example. It's around, you know, Black women, we always have to make do with less and create
Uh-huh.
more. Like when
Mm-hmm.
I was growing up, my mom eventually finished her undergrad, and she tried to look for a job as a teacher, and she couldn't
Mm-hmm.
find anything for like a good 2 years, and not even 2 years, probably like more than that, probably like five years or so. Quite early in my life when I was a teenager, and I remember she started going to the market to start selling cabbages, just to
Right.
sell cabbages, which is very unique, right, for someone to have an undergrad and yet she's busy hustling in that sense, which is what we would call today, to try
Right. Right. Right.
and
Right.
make end meets. And so, in that sense, it's like she's able to do more with quite less until she eventually got a teacher job. But she was
Mm-hmm.
always thinking about different ways to earn an income.
Right.
And if you think about it in that sense, as a Black woman professionally, you always thinking of different ways to solve a problem. And sometimes you're
Right.
not even given sufficient resources.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you have to basically clean up things, right?
Right.
And because you, as a Black woman, you're like, yeah, I'm used to sort of this kind of journey. You have no problem taking on projects that are very demanding, that requires
Mm-hmm.
you to sort of not step in with that like masters and I'm very qualified, so I'm not gonna spend 6 hours reviewing invoices, for example, because
Right.
I'm very
Mm-hmm.
qualified. As a Black woman, you're like, okay, I know how life is like, so you have no problem stepping into that space. And for me, growing up and seeing how my mom did things, it just naturally something I always carry with. So whenever I solve a problem, I don't look at it and say, okay, we have to solve this problem and exclude myself. I dive
Right.
deep with the team that is actually doing sort of the tasks that are beneath my professional expertise to
Right.
get a project done. And because then I'm so used to that. So it's one of the key strengths that we bring in that
Right.
is hardly recognized, right?
That
Resilience
is, yeah.
is the
Yeah.
second one, right? And
Yeah.
I think with the example that I've just mentioned, it just goes hand in hand because you always have to be resilient. When we look at the data around Black women in South Africa and career opportunities, there isn't really a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them, right? Which means your journey towards your career sometimes is not as smooth as mine, where I was able to get an undergrad graduate program that sort of activated my next steps. Sometimes it
Right.
really takes longer. So you have to be resilient and go into different job opportunities to try and still make end meets, but at the same time, shift towards whatever ambition or vision you always want
Mm-hmm.
for yourself. So, two things I just mentioned, for me, those are the most core ones that we bring in that are hardly sort of recognized.
I love that. I love that, and I love that that has been recognized in your career, right? And you've then also created a brand around this that is tapping into your authentic self, right? And utilizing the skills that you already had. All right, Katakani, I want to go back to the part of our conversation where you talked about how you got to appreciate diversity and that you had mentors and sponsors from all walks of life. So this is also a topic that is quite that is also quite salient for anyone career wise, right?
Yeah.
Having mentors and sponsors. I want to understand your experiences of that, maybe with an example of one mentor. And then also, I think sponsorship is something that not everyone quite understands. What is it and what does it look like? So I would love to hear your experiences with that.
Yes, that's an actually great question. And when I look back in my career, I realized that sponsors and mentors are so important at the start of your career than
Mm-hmm.
somewhere in the middle. And the reason behind that is because they come in at the right time, where your success is actually important to ensure that it unlocks the next couple of successes or the next couple of roles that
Mm-hmm.
you have in your career. So I'll
Right.
tell you a short story about how I started. I
Mm-hmm.
did a graduate program for about a year, and for that graduate program, when I was interviewing for it, I was actually late for my interview, right? So I know it's
Were you on PC people time? What was happening?
it's such an embarrassing thing to admit.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you the context around that and why I was
Mm-hmm.
late. So I used to live a bit far from the interviewing location, and I needed to take 4 taxis to get to the location. So
Mm-hmm.
for those that sort of are not familiar with the taxi setup in South Africa, we call the minibuses that takes about 15 people as taxis. So that's how
Mm-hmm. At
we
the
refer to
time.
it as
Mm-hmm.
a taxi. It's not the typical Uber. It's that kind of setup. And for the taxi to leave what we call the taxi rank, which is where you catch the taxi, it needs to be full sometimes. So in this case, I took 4 taxis, and with the last taxi, which was actually in a business park, it took longer for that taxi to fill up. It was about 2 hours plus, because
Mm-hmm.
the reason behind that was that people don't go into business parks during the day. So
Right.
they go in the morning and then after work, but there isn't really much movement during the day. So because my interview was during the day, I actually then encountered that challenge, which was something new for me because also I wasn't aware of how the business world
Right.
worked,
Mm-hmm.
right? How's the transport situation like? And I remember I'm sitting in this taxi. The taxi is like just 2 people, so it's three. It's just so far from filling up, and I just sort of like was really devastated by that. And something you can also do in South Africa is you can pay for the taxi to leave the taxi station, right? So in this
Yeah.
case, I needed to pay for those seats for this taxi to move, but I didn't have the money to do so. So I'm just there,
Rough.
wrapped, and I remember just calling the recruiter and I say, "Hey, I'm late. This is the situation." And she immediately understood it because she knows about this. She's like,
Right.
"Yes, I'm aware of this, right? Let me talk to the hiring manager." And she spoke to the hiring manager, came back to me, and she said, "Well, the hiring manager will actually just move a few things in her calendar, but still come through and keep me posted." And in that moment, I just realized the importance of diversity overall, right? Just
Right.
that
Mm-hmm.
company was really practicing what we call inclusive hiring, right?
Right.
Understanding
Mm-hmm.
where you come from and what kind of challenges you will face and how to accommodate you. So I remember I eventually got to the interview. I was sure that they will not call me back, so I moved on. And
Yeah.
because you're like, I broke the first
You're like, this was already a disaster. I don't expect
semester,
anything.
not expecting anything. And they actually then called me and said, "Hey, congratulations, we are extending an offer." And I was really shocked. But at the same
Right.
time, the fact that they still called me was what really pulled me into wanting to work for this organization. Although I had other opportunities, I felt
Mm-hmm.
this is actually where I want to be, because already the company's culture was just evident from our first interaction. So first
Right.
week in, I asked the hiring manager, because I'm like, okay, so like, why did you still hire me, right? And she said something so powerful, and it sort of narrates with the story that we're talking about around Black women, and just the extra strengths that we sometimes possess because of our life experiences. She said
Mm-hmm.
to me, the reason why I hired you is because you went through all of that chaos and you still came through and delivered
Mm.
in the interview.
Right.
Right. I was like, yeah, that's actually a strength I didn't realize I demonstrated through
Right.
that tough or challenging experience, that actually was
Mm-hmm.
taken into consideration in the hiring process. Because for other candidates that came in and they were perfect, and maybe we all had similar grades, where we have high grades, so we're stars, and all of that
Mm-hmm.
academic perspective, I was able to already demonstrate a strength that
You still showed up
I still showed up.
and
And
showed out.
exactly, and delivered. And and she was really amazing to have actually pointed that out. And quite likely, I mean, she was an African American woman in South Africa with just one purpose, and that was to build other Black women, right, as
Yeah.
well, right. As much as she mentors and sponsors everyone, she was really passionate about ensuring that in finance, because she obviously recognized the low numbers of Black women in finance, that she's able to
Mm-hmm.
positively contribute. And she was really amazing to have actually helped me. And since then, I'm always grateful for that experience, because everything else just, you know,
It's rolled from
yeah,
there.
yeah, exactly.
I appreciate so many things about this story. First, on the inclusive hiring, right? Companies having, or at least hiring, or talent acquisition having perspective of
Yeah,
broader perspective, right? And that can only come um, from being deeply empathetic. May I ask if the talent acquisition person was South African,
yes, she was.
and were they Black as well?
Yes.
So this is how they immediately got it, right?
I
Because they
didn't
have the lived
over explain.
experience to understand where you're coming from, right? And
Exactly.
then you pass on to this hiring manager who also happened to be Black as well, who has lived experience and perspective to understand that you still showed up, right? Or to appreciate that you still showed up despite everything, right? So we're
Exactly.
all here most of the time, despite all of the things that we've had to go through, right?
Exactly. Because the landscape in South Africa is very evident, right? Like, we are the top unequal country in the world, right?
Mm,
And it's very racially driven, right? So if
right.
you are operating in South Africa and building your business there, understanding this dynamic means that you have to understand where the majority of Black people come from, right? We
Are
come
coming
from
from.
that. I need to catch 4 taxis to get to this
To
cool
get
job,
there.
right, that I just got, that will actually unlock my my career, right? I have to take care of all these different elements. And I remember my entire journey in that 12 months program was really smooth, because this hiring manager also ensured that I had transport to go home.
Mm-hmm.
In finance, we have month end, quarter end, so we would work late, right, around 10 p.m. And she made sure that I don't have to worry about how I get home, that I'm always safe, and I have
Mm-hmm.
the means to be able to do that, so that I can stay up late as well and learn and perfect my career, so that I'm able to be better positioned versus
Yeah.
others who have cars. And it's great for them that their parents were able to afford those for them, but not it wasn't really something that is common. And in South Africa, you always think about it in that sense, that because we are so unequal, those dynamics will always favor a certain group versus
Yeah.
another group
Right.
when it comes to the majority. And having an inclusive hiring experience is so important. Having
Mm-hmm.
and diverse mentors and sponsors that sort of understands, because she's African American, but she's
Mm-hmm.
really understood it so perfectly, and she went ahead of me and made plans to ensure that I am better positioned, right? So what I need to do is to come to work and deliver, right? And not worry about the things that are outside of my control.
Your circumstances, right? So circumstances don't shape or to not determine who you are or who you become, and your should not limit your potential.
Exactly, exactly,
Right.
exactly, exactly.
And as
And
Black women, we often need that kind of support, right?
we do,
Yeah,
as
right.
so there's no way we can succeed in large numbers without that. It's just like I mentioned about South Africa. I don't know about other countries. It's just not possible. So that
Right.
extra push is so needed for us to capture the opportunities that are out there, right? So we can all become professionals and excel in different fields. We just need that extra push, and it's so
Mm-hmm.
important for leaders to understand what that push is,
Yeah.
right? And I remember just mid through my career, when I joined the current company that I currently work for, I
Mm-hmm.
then encountered how sponsorship then works,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then in that journey, I had a sponsor, a male sponsor, who I just told him, hey, this is my career ambitions. This is what I want to do. He's like, cool, just go work hard. I'll take care of this. Right. And he just ensured that throughout the process of me getting to my next level, my next role, that he is helping to open those doors. And
Right. Mm-hmm.
my part is, hey, work hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Deliver, and everything else I'll take care of, right? And that is so important because we know for a fact that at the moment we still have to get that extra push, right? That someone
Right.
who's going to be in the room and say, hey, Katekani can be a great candidate for this role, right? Can you talk to her, right? She's done
Mm-hmm.
this, she
Mm-hmm.
solved this problem. I think it's actually a similar problem that you have. So hire her for that. And
Mm-hmm.
through that experience, it's really has worked out quite well for me, because through that sponsor, I met another sponsor who just all these different sponsors just kept helping me climb up and helping me become a better version of myself,
A better
and
professional. Uh-huh.
then become a better professional. And again, none of them are South Africans, right?
Right.
And that there is still sort of what I mentioned around just the diversity of it, that your career
Right.
is being built by anyone in the world, right? Or
Right.
people that come from anywhere in the world, because they embrace diversity and inclusion.
I love that. I love especially the part where, well, two things for me, right? One is that you were definitely someone who was worth the political capital that the sponsors used, right? Now, we can't miss that part, right? Actually performing and delivering is an important part of a mentoring and sponsoring relationship, right? Especially for a sponsoring relationship, because they're going to put your name in a room that you are not in. You
Mhm.
have to be worth that political capital that they're spending on you, right? As well. And then in actual, and then actually this is the example of how sponsoring actually is. I would say even that Black woman at the beginning also was a sponsor, right? The things
Sure.
that she did. So you didn't experience it only in this part of your career, but people who actively use their influence and power and access, right, to open doors for other people, to
Yes.
remove barriers for you to succeed,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I
And the most
think.
important thing about the sponsor, right, is that you don't have to ask them to. The most
Mm-hmm.
powerful sponsors that I've experienced are people that have sponsored me without me even asking them to. For because they recognize that, hey, I have this person that their profile is completely different. I mean, we don't. It's very simple to see that, right?
Right.
The
Mm-hmm,
stats are
mm-hmm.
always quite clear that there isn't really a lot of Black women in finance. So when you encounter
Mm-hmm.
Black women in finance, then that means that that person already has people that are actively helping this person. So when you encounter them, your first instinct is, hey, how can I help this person? And
Yeah.
I know sometimes we speak about this quite a lot in terms of, hey, should I ask someone to be my sponsor, right? Or my, I think mentors are quite great in a sense that you know, you want to ask someone to mentor you through a journey. But with sponsors, I've had this unique experiences where I never really asked them, like actively say, hey, can you be my sponsor? They took it upon themselves to see that, hey, you are performing because yeah, I work hard. And that's why for us, it's quite important that you work hard and you do what you need to do. And they
Mm-hmm.
then sort of took it upon themselves to do so. And I don't think there's a lot of people in professional places that actually took it upon themselves to try and help Black professionals. And I think we should have more of
Right, right,
that.
right, right, right.
It's more effective. Although asking someone, it's also great, I just find it far more impactful because the person is really passionate about this and they want
Yeah.
to ensure that the world becomes a lot more equal. So I mean that's my view, but eager to hear.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
hear you. I hear you. My thoughts on it, they're a little different, and they're a little different in that, first off, you actually did ask this guy that you just talked about, right? You asked him to support your career. How he did it was up to him, right? But he had the awareness that Katekani needs support, right? So I think you still have to ask. And then the quality of the relationship is the one that determines if they're going to, what action they're going to take, right? You
okay.
can't just wake up. So I think what you, at least the perspective that I hear you saying, you can't just wake up and pick someone and be like, hey, can you be my like, why? I don't know you.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Why? Like, what is that, right? So you have to cultivate the relationship and have. So for me, right, my mentors actually have been my sponsors as well. They continue to be, right, because we know each other so well, right, and they trust now my talent and my integrity and everything, that
Yeah,
when they have, so it was also in the picking the right, like, people who have the kind of influence that in the spaces I am in, to be able to support that. So this is a conversation we could have forever, for sure, right?
yeah,
But I know that you didn't ask at the moment of the actions that they did, right? But they had the awareness and the relationship with you
yeah,
to go and put your name forward for that next opportunity, right? So it
yes,
all starts with actually cultivating the relationship. And like, well, it's first picking the people who, like, picking wisely, right, who becomes your mentor, knowing that you want to turn the key to them using their influence to support you,
yes,
right?
yes,
And
yes,
then when those moments come, you they're able to actually do that, right? So
yes, yes,
I don't want to give at least for me, I wouldn't give the message of like, don't, because it perpetuates the narrative of like, which is the problem that not only Black women but women have in general, right? That like, put your head down and do the work and someone will notice. No, baby, that's not what's gonna happen.
yes. And I like what you're saying because I think
Yeah,
we're sort of agreeing to some extent, and that is that you cultivated the relationship, right? So
right.
like when
Mm-hmm.
you met them initially, they sort of also cultivated the relationship and they were eager to want to see how they add value to you. So sometimes
Right.
you meet people and not really get that sense, right, that this person wants to cultivate my career, and then you start asking, actively saying, hey, can you actually help me? But then when
Right.
the relationship is there, you're like, hey, this is what I want for myself. And they're like, great, let's work out what's the best way. And through that, then they basically actively sponsor you. So it's more that you still sort of cultivate the relationship initially. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the ask part. But
Mm-hmm.
then it's very challenging to now be in the relationship and you still have to ask, or like try to
Yeah, but it's not like an outright ask, right? It's more
accept.
like, because
Yes.
I would tell you that I am experiencing some version of this right now, right? Because I am looking to advance in my career at this time. And the conversations I've had, well, I have mentors who have already been my sponsors before, who I continuously have conversations about where I am, right? And everything in there. And part of my conversations with them was like, hey, if you hear something that you think my profile is good for, like, let me know, right? Um, and I planted all these seeds in these different people who are connected to me in this type of relationship, right?
Yes.
And I actually am in the interview process right now for a role that then came up because of this, right? Like
Yes.
one of my sponsors saw a role and then he came forward and he's like, hey, I think from the conversations we've had, this is the right growth opportunity for you, right? And then he like, put in the recommendation to the hiring manager and everything. I don't have the outcome of that job interview yet, of that job interview process yet, but this is sponsorship in action, right?
Yes, exactly. So it's indeed a similar experience that
Yeah.
we're both
Mhm.
having in that yes, I also have conversations with my sponsors and they do something similar
Right.
as yours and you're right in that we shouldn't so the takeaway isn't really that yeah you should just put your head down and
And do the work. Mhm.
that a miracle sponsor will show up but you still cultivate the different relationships and from them sponsorship opportunities will arise and sometimes it
Indeed.
might not but you keep sort of pressing forward so yeah
Yeah.
great way
Well,
of
thanks for
putting it.
sharing your experiences, though. I love it. I love it. Katkani, we're going to jump into some rapid fire questions, and I want you to just answer them. Don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Just answer them with like the first thing that comes to mind for you.
Okay, let's do
Okay,
this.
are you ready?
Yeah,
All right. What is your favorite food?
a pop and a meat.
Okay. What is a movie that you lately or TV show that you lately watched and you loved?
Movie The Matrix.
What was your last travel destination?
Aalborg in Denmark.
Okay. Name one famous Black woman who inspires you.
Bozoma St. John.
Okay. What are you most grateful for in life?
Being a black woman. Not
Hey,
special, but it's an amazing gift.
I love that for you. I love that for you. Okay, I want to go back to your favorite food. Can you tell people what that is actually?
Yeah, so pap is a South African dish which is prepared from maize meal. So we
Okay.
always grew up with that. So you'd always have pap with like your greens, your
Yeah.
meat, and all these different things. And even now, I'm based in Amsterdam, and I still prepare pap here. I
Yeah.
buy it, and it's amazing.
I love it. I love it. All right, let's land this plane, Katekani. Can you tell me about a book that you read recently, or maybe, yeah, in the last 6 months or so, that you really loved and why?
Yeah, I mean, one of the most impactful book I read in the last 6 months is a book Bozoma St. John actually wrote, which is The Edge and
Mm-hmm.
Life. And it
Mm-hmm.
was so refreshing because it reminded me of how fragile life is and
Mm-hmm.
how you never really know how much time you have and as such
Right.
you do not have the permission every single day to just relax and not live your life intentionally, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you have to live your life and every single day intentionally in order for you to achieve everything that you actually want to achieve, right? You don't want to find yourself in a deathbed wondering what could have happened, right, if you were
Mm-hmm.
more intentional, if you had more courage, which is something that um, that you hear quite a lot of. That
Yeah.
you only live once, right? We also create this sort of narratives, but we don't even live up to them, right? So
Right.
that book, when she just spoke about her dying husband who was struggling with cancer and the journey it took her
Mm-hmm.
personally, it was really, really refreshing. And personally, I just since then have always wanted to just live my life urgently. So whatever I want to go for,
Urgently.
I go for it.
I love it. I love that book too as well. Katekani, what is one Black woman who inspires you, and why?
I'll probably mention my mother, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the amount of humbleness that she demonstrated for me growing up. I spoke a bit about her earlier. Is something that was very inspiring, because she's always humble, loving, and also treats people the way she wants to be treated.
Yeah.
It used to be annoying when I was growing up, because this one time a friend of mine lost my phone, and I'm like, Mom, this friend lost my phone, and I need to get her to buy my phone back, right? That's, I
Yeah.
mean, they lost it. And then my mom spoke to me, and she's like, hey, you trusted them with the phone, and as such, you need to look at your own actions, um,
Mm-hmm.
and not necessarily demand to have this phone back. And I'm like, but that's too nice. Right?
Yeah.
Like, that's way too nice. And
Mm-hmm.
however, she was getting me to think about the importance of treating others as you would want to be treated. So if I was the one who lost the phone, then I would probably, want some grace from that person, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
not in a position to actually buy that phone back, which was actually
I
in this.
love that. So
So
she modeled empathy for you,
she modeled empathy for me, and
humility, the things that have become so important to you in your, as part of your values.
exactly. And I think it's so important in there to just be more empathetic, always treat people as you'd like them to treat you, and just always have
Mm-hmm.
that reflective approach. So yeah, she's been very, very instrumental.
I love that. Okay, can you then leave our audience with two pieces of advice that you may have for other Black women out there?
Yes, so I only have two, right? So
Yeah.
the first one is just go for anything that you actually want to go for as a Black woman.
Uh-huh.
Do not be stuck with what other people think should be your life, or what
Mm-hmm.
is actually appropriate for you as a Black woman. If you have an ambition, you want to start a business, you want to advance in your career, just go for it, right?
Right.
And put together plans and actions, get people excited about your journey as well, and through that they will help you along the way. So your
Right.
mentors and sponsors will actually make those dreams a reality. So it's always important to go for what you want, and
Your
don't shy
dreams
away.
are valid. Go
Yes,
for your
your dreams
ambitions are
are
valid. Go for them.
exactly, Black child, your dreams are valid, go for them. Embrace ambition, it's a good word. It
Mm-hmm.
helps you. Uh, it helps you craft your thinking, and your
Yeah.
mindset around success, and that you can become anything you want. And the
Right.
second one is support other Black women.
Oof.
Right. In my story, I spoke about these two amazing Black women that I encountered at the start of my career. And
Mm-hmm.
since then, I've always saw that the importance of supporting other Black women is how we all progress in numbers. So if you
Mm-hmm.
any Black woman doing something dope, coming up, just support them. Step up
Yeah.
to them and say, hey, how do I help you? Right? How do we all just come together, collaborate, and just support each other? And I think if we do that, the world will just become a lot more better, and also just recognize that we are the ones we need, right? We can become what we need for ourselves to
Mm-hmm.
other.
Yeah, I love those two pieces of advice. Wow, Katakani, this conversation was amazing. Thank you so much, eh?
Thank you for having me. This was really a very amazing conversation, and I hope your audience will enjoy listening to this.
I'm pretty sure that they will. Um, and there are so many great takeaways from it. So thank you for sharing your story and your trajectory and your experiences. I'm sure a lot of other people out there will really appreciate that and resonate with them.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks,
All right,
Nancy.
lady. I will let you have your day back, and we talk soon.
Talk soon. Bye.
All right.